The disappointing truth about this world is that most people would rather live in an illusion that's comfortable and familiar instead of actually waking up into a truth that would go against the foundations of their beliefs. So, as the generations have gone on, we have become disconnected from the wisdom of our ancestors. Now, this was an intentional sort of Trojan horse that was played on humanity in order for a small group of controlling elites to actually keep humanity in the dark, to keep them living in a reality that's adjacent to the truth, to keep us separated from our divine mother. And in doing so, much of humanity, as the generations have gone on and the wisdom has been forgotten and people have just grown up in a world that just is that way. You're born and that's what you're raised in. That's the culture. That is the ideas, the type of education that's given. It becomes comfortable. And what the ego, what the mind is designed to do is keep us in a situation that we will survive in. It doesn't have to do with us thriving. It doesn't have to do with us ascending. It doesn't have to do with us connecting with each other in a unifying consciousness. What the mind does with these beliefs and these prisms, these constructs that keep us bound to this false matrix, is for survival. It is just to keep us, just to say that, okay, well, I'm surviving and all the other humans are surviving, so I need to cling on to this. And if someone challenges my belief about it, then I'm going to take that as a personal attack, right? I'm not going to talk about it directly, but those of you who are seeing what's going on in the world now, I'm sure you can put two and two together, all right? When we see the earth, and we see nature, and we see how we are a direct result of nature, nature is very intelligent, and our DNA, when activated, is something that can perform types of miracles that humanity has yet to see. And the more that we get disconnected from nature, we become something else. And this ends up causing all sorts of things, creating all sorts of anomalies within reality that cause certain things like mental illnesses, mental disorders, physical illnesses, physical disorders, spiritual detachment, to where we're getting involved in all sorts of systems that, like I said, are a reality that is adjacent from the truth, but it is not the actual truth. And this is because throughout time, throughout these generations passing, we've been hypnotized. We have been hypnotized into believing that some of these things that are absolutely atrocities and absolutely false need to be justified as if the truth weren't something that spoke for itself. People are arguing for the atrocities. They're arguing for the systems that are keeping us enslaved, keeping us sick, keeping us disconnected from the earth, the nature, the divine mother. And yet people, they don't want to let go of it. And this is Stockholm Syndrome, my friends. In other words, for those of you who haven't heard of the term, this is where people essentially get attached to their captor. Like, I think this evolved in like war times, where they would take like prisoners of war, and eventually the prisoners of war, in like such a state of psychological disarray, would start feeling like empathic, like empathy, sympathy for the people that were actually capturing them. And they would start siding with them, and they would start looking to them as if they were their masters, they were their friends, like they were the good guys. And this is a psychological disorder, my friends. And this is what many people actually go through when it's like, if you tell them that the medicine's fake, if you tell them that the doctors were brought up on a system that was based off of petroleum, that was brought about in order to replace natural medicine, and then all the natural medicine was deemed alternative because these controlling families came in, and they wanted to say, well, we're the oil mongers, so we want them all to be on this system where we can keep them sick and we can keep dealing drugs to them, while we keep making more profits because we own the oil wells. And then you tell people that it's these medicines that are making people sick. And then pandemonium, my friends. Pandemonium. They're so attached to the false ideas, and that's because they never learned the truth. Because in order to actually accept the truth, they have to accept that the foundations on which their reality is built was a lie. In the mind, the ego, that's the last thing that it wants to do. So like I said, it goes into self-defense, self-destruct mode, essentially, cognitive dissonance, where people, I don't want to hear it, blah, 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 blah. I'm emotionally charged about this. And then they shut down and they can't handle the information. This is how deeply this adjacent false matrix has actually infiltrated the minds and the consciousness of humanity. But my friends, whether it be the consciousness, whether it be the beings that we're worshiping outside of ourselves, whether it be the fake foods that we're eating, whether it be the fake medicines that they're giving us, we have to recognize that it's time to wake up. It's time to realize that the closer that we get back to the origin of self, in other words, the unification, is where we're actually going to find solutions to things. Where instead of medicines that cause illness and foods that cause illness, religions that cause disconnection, education that causes insanity, mental illness, madness, dissociation from the self, we're going to find the balance and harmony that exists within us. And now I'm not saying we go back to caveman days, but I'm saying there's a unity between nature and technology that can be achieved. There's a unity between bringing the modern together with the ancient, the way that our ancient ancestors did, and using this technology in order to create harmony within the collective and the self, instead of individuals that are using it for control. Now this is a hard topic to address because many people, when you tell them, they will think you are the bad one because you're telling them this and you're the messenger of the information, and they're saying, they've essentially projected onto you like, well, you're telling me my reality is a lie, so you're the bad person, you are the threat, I see you as this. And this is where people say, they call you names like you're a conspiracy theorist, you're insane, you're crazy, all of those types of things. But that's because, my friends, these people are not our enemies. They are just, they're more victims of a system that they're unaware of. And that's the sad thing. Because we have to have a tremendous amount of strength to still be willing to say what needs to be said. To be willing to uphold the truth even if we're scrutinized. Even if we're looked at as if we're insane. As if we're this, that, and the other. Right? But the fact is, humanity will never last in this state. Humanity will never make it to a point where we're ascending from this place and we're actually progressing on a level of consciousness. And that's because in order for the consciousness to ascend, we need to unify and we need to lighten up. And when you carry lots of heavy external realities, when you carry false truths, you are heavy. You are a distorted wheel. It is a wheel with a wobble. Because we are a torus field. We are a field of energy. And that energy needs to be pure. The frequency needs to be pure. It needs to have integrity. And when it doesn't, it causes distortion. And that distortion causes a wobble in the wheel. Instead of a smooth wheel, it's like if you were to think of the wheel on a car, how it's in line. It's in alignment. We go and get our wheels aligned, right? So it spins, and it can spin and spin and spin and go faster and faster and faster. And if it's balanced properly, it's not going to lose its stability. But if it was imbalanced, it would start to shake. It would start to wobble. And what happens if a wheel sped up and it wobbled and wobbled and wobbled? Well, eventually it's going to topple over, and it's going to cause a whole bunch of chaos. It's going to self-destruct. It's going to break itself. And this is what happens when people are distorted. There even becomes a mechanism within the consciousness to where when people are distorted and they try to speed up their frequency and the wheel wobbles, they hard stop. It's like a self-protection mechanism. It's like you will crash if you wobble and you try to go faster, if you try to raise your frequency. So we have to remove the blockages. We have to remove the distortions. We have to pierce through the veil of all of the false narratives and the false teachings that have gone on for generations now, that our parents got from their grandparents, from their grandparents, from their grandparents, that all came from this institution of people that wanted to control humanity. Now, we need to understand that this was a very pre-planned, predetermined attack on the consciousness of humanity. This was something that was designed to do this specific thing. Like, make no mistake, this was not like, oh, well, it's just as good as we can do as humanity. Yeah, things are corrupt, but it's just kind of how it is. This was how it was planned. It was designed to get humanity into this state of sickness and disconnection. Because when we are sick and disconnected, we are weak. And when we're weak, it's easy for us to be controlled. And when it's easy for us to be controlled, it's easy for us to look to someone who seems to know what's going on, like the experts, quote unquote, the politicians, the religious figures, always looking outside of ourselves because we're so disconnected from the source within us, because we're so disconnected from our divine mother. It's within the truth, it's within ourselves that these frequencies of sovereignty and awareness and ascension actually exist. And whether or not humanity's ready for it, it is going to be thrust upon them. Because the frequency of the planet is rising. And the more insane things get, the more people begin to look for a way out of it. Sometimes it is that counterbalance of the suffering has become so great that someone would rather take the uncomfortable truth than continue suffering the way that they are. And that's how many people end up awakening. They suffer so much that they wake up. But my friends, it doesn't have to be that way. And for the people that you know, even if you're one of the people that are on the fence about this and you don't know and you think this might be crazy, that I'm some crazy conspiracy theorist and I'm talking and it's blasphemy and all of this, like, really check in with yourself. Do you really think that these things outside of you have your best interest in mind? Do you really think that these people that you might be watching and listening to and following in their footsteps, do you think they're masters? Do you think they're ascended? Do you think they're in some sort of state of harmony in themselves? Do they have what you want? Or are they simply people that it's like, you just kind of believe that they know where they're going because they speak with a certain authority and a certain charisma, right? They know how to talk to people in order to get them to pay attention, in order to get them to listen, right? But you have to go within and discern that for yourself. Because, my friends, this isn't about being codependent anymore. This isn't even about, I'm not even saying follow me instead of them. I'm saying tap back into yourself. Because I'm not following anyone and I wouldn't want you to follow me. The only reason I make these videos and I try to transmit this message to you is so you look back within and recognize that the self within me is the same as the self within you. And within that self, when we're all looking at the same thing and we hold that same thing within us as the highest thing, then we're unified. We're no longer trying to fight over which one is the right one and oh, I need to see your peer-reviewed study in order to actually prove that this common sense idea is actually real. No, you know it's a state of knowing. It's a state of being. Because you recognize that the adjacent reality is not the same frequency as the truth. The truth is a frequency of clarity and it resonates. Even when the adjacent reality is screaming at you as loud as it can to get you to pay attention and to try to take your energy from you and take your power so it can continue to be powerful. Because, my friends, recognize the power that our consciousness holds. What we give power to grows and becomes more powerful. So when these small families decide this is the narrative, and then 50 to 70 to 90% of the population goes along with that narrative and believes that that's true, what do you think they end up creating? A distorted reality. They end up creating the very reality that is adjacent to it, and if you're still believing in it, then you're a part of it. And I'm not saying you're the bad person. I'm saying you're a consciousness, if you're in that reality, that hasn't yet awakened to the truth within you. And in order to awaken to the truth within you, you have to start chipping away the pieces. You have to start questioning things. You have to start looking at things from a critical mind and asking yourself, what is the end goal? Where does this lead us? Because whether it be the fight between gods, where it ends when one god destroys the other and now it's good forever, or it ends when everybody takes the fake medicine and now we've solved the thing forever, right? It never is going to complete itself. This is always going to be some realm of duality where we have to fight this. Oh, and now it's over, and then it flips around, and then there's this other thing, because it's an unbalance, it's a wobbling wheel. It corrects to one side, and then the other side, it comes back and corrects to that side. This is how the duality goes. It will never end. It will always be some like, and they're fighting us, and we're fighting them, and we're the righteous ones, and they're the evil ones, and this is the right thing to do, and that's the wrong thing to do, and all of this. It's always going to be this duality when you're playing in this adjacent, these external realities of the self. Within the self, you just are. You're just being. You don't need all this external stuff because you're tapped in. And then from that place of being tapped in, that place of being whole and unified and balanced, you can actually create a reality based on things that are harmonious with that balance instead of creating this constant counterbalance. Now, think about it, my friends. If you had a scale and the scale was balanced, like there was nothing on either side of it, but you had to do something. You had to do something to it in order to take a step forward. What would you do? Now, the external system would say, well, I'd place something on one side and then that side would tip, and then I'd have to place something on the other side and then that something would tip. And then you're playing this game of constantly counterbalancing and counterbalancing, but let's reset that. There's nothing on it. What do? You hold it from the center. You hold it from the center. Being whole and being unified doesn't mean the dualities go away. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be a polarity of either side, but it means that instead of you being one of the polarities, you're embodied, and you see that you're looking down at them like the pyramid. The eye on top of the pyramid. You're looking down at the two poles. And from there you can balance it without like being on a ship and you're like, whoa, too far this way, everybody run over here. Whoa, too far this way, everybody run over here. Because that's the rat race they're keeping us in. Now they're constantly trying to keep us in this state of chasing the duality on one side and the other, and that's burning out our brains, literally. Because you have neurons in the brain that actually connect between the two hemispheres. And when the brain is constantly just like polarity, 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 eventually you lose the ability to actually become centered and activate your higher faculties to balance the wheel in order to vibrate faster and reach a higher state of reality in which you're receiving information on a higher bandwidth. This is why we have to be balanced. Because when we're balanced, we can spin the wheel faster and receive information from higher sources. We can see the picture from higher dimensions. And we're no longer playing in this world of lack and duality where there's never enough, and how are we going to fix this and how are we going to fix this, when the same system that's trying to solve the problems allegedly is causing those problems for it to solve. That's how these beings, that's how these people, these families, this state of consciousness exists. That's what it does. It's a dualistic, fragmented entity that has possessed humanity, and all it knows how to do is be in the dualistic force. The good and the bad and the separation and the us and them and the division, tearing everything apart, trying to keep us divided on all sorts of issues so we don't recognize that we're all one. Now, humanity has a long way to go in realizing that, but the first step is realizing that within yourself. Before you go and try to fix anybody, before you go and try to tell anybody that, well, you're wrong about this and this is because of this and this, before you go and get involved in it, you need to look within. And you need to ask yourself, am I whole? Have I become fragmented, and am I playing into this duality? Am I a part of the false reality? Or am I speaking from a place of integrity and truth? All right, my friends, be whole, be well, and take care. We'll talk soon.